We are talking about the evolving lists in the language publishing scene in India. We've seen this vibrancy develop even more, I would say, enhanced and increasingly wide spectrum over the last 2.5 decades. And I've had the chance to also fortunately work with some of them on translations. So uh, I'm extremely honored to have all of you because in my eyes, you all are literary stalwarts. You're holding on as your beacons, in fact, to ensure that we keep reading in our languages, which is, I think, very, very integral to keep our identities in place. At least it does help. Um, just a couple of general observations on what's happening because we are looking at translating from, let's say, Hindi, Tamil, Bangla, Malayalam, Punjabi, Telugu into English and other languages, and also vice versa. So keeping that in mind, um, when all of you start commenting, I'd also like you to comment on what differences are you seeing in terms of the kind of genres readers are accepting, what kind of challenges all of you are facing to keep the sale of books going, given that there is so much happening in the tech world. You're also challenged by digital advancements. There's also the question of readership. How do you reach out to new readership, especially when everybody is just kind of glued to their phones? There's just too much happening on social media. There's so much content out there. And so the marketing strategy has to be very different for either or, whether books published in your language and in translations. How do you search for new talent? So all of that, I want you to just generally also comment when I ask specific questions. Um, and also want to leave a thought with you about the quality of translations. So find the right kind of translator uh, who will do justice to a particular book, whichever genre. Um, and the editing of those books is a very different ball game. And then would you work closely with the author of the original language work? How closely do you work? So I'm sure a lot of these insights can go into while you're answering these specific questions that I'll come to. I think I can start with Shailesh ji. हिंदी युगम में आपने बहुत एडवांस किया है, एक रिमार्केबल ग्रोथ आई है, आपके ऑथर्स के बारे में बहुत बातचीत हो रही है. जी. आप क्या दिमाग में रखते हैं व्हेन यू स्टार्ट लुकिंग कि मैं इस ऑथर को मैंने चांस देना है, इनको पब्लिश करना है, इनको आपने नर्चर करना है, या यू ग्रो ऑर्गेनिकली और यू गो इंस्टिंक्टिवली, और आप कैसे पकड़ते हैं उस पल्स को कि हाँ आज की हिंदी रीडरशिप ये चीज़ को अडॉप्ट करेगी, इसको इस किताब को बहुत पसंद करेगी?
ये बताना बहुत मुश्किल है, लेकिन ये सब कुछ जो आपका एडिटर है, जो आपका संपादक है, उसके अपने विज़न पे निर्भर करता है. क्योंकि जब हमारे पास कोई मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट आती है तो उसकी सेलेबिलिटी के बारे में हम सबसे बाद में सोचते हैं. सबसे पहले ये सोचते हैं कि हमारा जो हमारे एडिटर्स है उनको वो कैसी लग रही है, कि क्या एक ऐसी चीज़ है जो नई होगी हमारे ऑडियंस के लिए. हमेशा मतलब हमारी सोच ऐसी होती है कि क्या कोई उसमें ऐसी चीज़ है जो कोई कंट्रीब्यूशन करेगा हमारे अपने कैटलॉग में भी. या अगर हम पूरे इकोसिस्टम की बात करें कि जो हिंदी लिटरेचर का इकोसिस्टम है उसमें क्या कोई चीज़ ऐसी कंट्रीब्यूट होगी जो पहले से एग्जिस्ट नहीं करती है. एक चीज़ ये हमारे माइंड में होती है. दूसरी बात जो आपने कही कि ये कैसे तय करते हैं कि इसको लोग पढ़ेंगे, तो उसका बहुत सामान्य सा फार्मूला हमारे दिमाग में ये है कि जो चीज़ें हमारे 4-5 लोगों को पढ़ने में सुख दे रही है, उसमें एक आनंद आ रहा है, तो वो सबको देगी. अगर हम उसमें फंस रहे हैं तो बड़ा मुश्किल है कि उसमें हमारे रीडर्स मतलब उसको पढ़ेंगे। तो यही अप्रोच अपनाते रहे हैं अभी तक, और उससे हम 10 में से 7 दफ़ा आमतौर पे सफल रहे हैं। तो हमें लगता है कि हमारा फार्मूला ठीक है।
Thank you. Kannan, I'll move to you. You've become this icon in Tamil publishing, and what I always say, Kannan has produced some superheroes. Oh, I thought we'll run out of time otherwise. Okay, so what Shailesh's response was that uh, the responsibility rests with the editor to feel and understand that a particular book will work and contribute to the larger ecosystem of Hindi literature in this country. They obviously are aware of what readers are taking pleasure in buying and reading, and they do keep a watch on that part. And I think the main point that he made was that if on reading a particular book, that is giving us that joy and that feeling that yes, this will work, that's what he goes by, their editing department goes by, and he says 7 out of 10 times they've been absolutely right. I think that's amazing. I hope I've, मैंने सही बोला?
Yeah, you 100%.
I'm doing this for the first time, huh? Translating from English.
आगे आप ट्राई कर सकती हैं।
So coming back to you, Kannan, as I said, you've produced superheroes, I think, out of writers. Many of them have won awards. Looking beyond these achievements, how are you planning to navigate the dynamic Tamil literary scene to reach further milestones, even in terms of global presence? What is it that leads you? And what are you doing to build those lists?
Yeah. So as a publisher, I don't see myself as somebody who sort of creates or produces great writers, and I think they are already there, either the capacity to write or they are already established writers. What I can do as a publisher is probably open the right doors for them, that their writings be read very well in Tamil by marketing and producing the book well, and also opening the doors for them to other languages so they can also reach out beyond Tamil. Beyond that of opening a door, everything else that happens, I think, is happening because of the writer's capacity and the way they express their own writing. So that is of primary importance than publisher's role. And I also believe that as one publisher, maybe I can sort of chart a dotted path or little bit of show the way, but as one publisher or one publishing company cannot sort of decide or guide the course of how a language works nationally or internationally. So thankfully, at least in Tamil Nadu now, the government has stepped in to take up a role, that they have organized Chennai International Book Fair now. And they have also come up with a program to fund translations of Tamil works into other languages. That's in baby steps now. The second year the book fair finished. So these are dramatically increasing the interactions between Indian international publishers and Tamil publishers and Tamil writers. So a lot of promising starts have happened in the last 2 years. Some of them will lead to books getting published. So I'm looking forward to the time when more writers are translated into English, and more of them also get translated into international languages. So I think that's only when it happens at that level can a language make an impact in the international or national scene.
Right, thank you. परमिंदर जी, रीथिंक फाउंडेशन का फोकस एक बड़ी डाइवर्स और सीरियस लिस्ट पे रहा है. आप क्या प्लान कर रहे हैं? पंजाबी बुक मार्केट को और फर्दर कैसे इन्फिल्ट्रेट करेंगे? कैसे और रीडरशिप को पहुंचेंगे? कोई स्पेसिफिक जॉनर्स को लेकर आप काम कर रहे हैं या कुछ स्ट्रैटेजी है, या आपने अपने पास्ट एक्सपीरियंस से कैसे आगे बढ़ रहे हैं?
पास्ट एक्सपीरियंस मेरा कुछ नहीं है मैम। रीथिंक में उसके नाम में ही उसका विज़न पड़ा है कि हम लोगों ने जब पंजाबी में रीथिंक को स्टार्ट किया था तो हमारी कोशिश ये थी कि पंजाबी की लीडरशिप को कुछ ऐसा दें कि जो अभी तक उन्हें मिला नहीं है। तो हमने कुछ नए जॉनर्स लेकर आए, क्योंकि पंजाबी में नॉन फिक्शन की जो बात होती थी बहुत कम होती थी। तो स्टार्टिंग हमने की आज से 2 साल पहले, तो कुछ ऐसी किताबें हमने अपने पाठकों को दी जो पंजाब के लोगों के लिए बिल्कुल नहीं थी। तो इस तरह मैं सोचता हूँ कि हम लोगों ने सिर्फ किताबें ही नहीं दी, हमने अपने एक नए पाठक वर्ग को भी क्रिएट किया है। तो इसमें 2-3 चीज़ें और हो जाती हैं कि जैसे हम लोगों ने रीथिंक में स्टार्टिंग में तो ट्रांसलेशन पे जोर दिया था कि कुछ अच्छी किताबें वर्ल्ड क्लासिक में से लेकर आए हम लोग। तो बाद में हम लोगों ने अपने पंजाब में भी कुछ मौलिक काम को पब्लिश करना शुरू किया है। तो स्टार्टिंग हमारी इतनी बेटर थी कि हमारी फर्स्ट पोइट्री की बुक को ही युवा पुरस्कार मिला था। तो अभी सेकंड वाली फिर उसमें नॉमिनेट हुई है। तो ऐसा है कि मुझे लगता है कि एक पब्लिशर के रूप में आपको यॉनरी नहीं, अपना एक रीडर जो वर्ग है उसको भी क्रिएट करना पड़ता है। तो वो हमने किया है। तो उसमें कुछ प्रॉब्लम्स आती हैं। शुरू में मुझे लगा था कि हम लोग बड़ा रिस्की काम कर रहे हैं, कौन पढ़ेगा इतनी टफ़ किताबें। लेकिन अभी मैं सीधा पटियाला जो पंजाबी यूनिवर्सिटी है वहाँ के बुक फेयर से ही यहाँ पे आया हूँ। तो उसमें हमने देखा कि जितना रिस्पॉन्स हमें मिल रहा है और बाकी किसी को नहीं मिल रहा। तो मेरा ख्याल है कि अच्छा एक पब्लिशर वही होता है जो अपने जो रीडर है उसको क्रिएट भी करता है, ना कि सिर्फ उसे किताबें ही देता है। तो इसी सोच के लिए हम लोग जाने जाते हैं और इसी के साथ हम लोग आगे बढ़ रहे हैं।
तो आप पोइट्री के अलावा और किताबें भी?
पोइट्री के अलावा अभी हमने नॉवल भी पब्लिश किए हैं, स्टोरीज़ भी कर रहे हैं। उसके साथ हिस्ट्री और पॉलिटिक्स में हमारा ख़ास इंटरेस्ट है। पंजाब में हिस्ट्री और पॉलिटिक्स का अपना ही एक बड़ा पाठक वर्ग है और ज़्यादातर किताबें उसी की जानी जाती हैं अभी। तो पोइट्री की कुछ किताबें हैं जो पाकिस्तान से जो है शाहमुखी स्क्रिप्ट से गुरमुखी में होती हैं, वो भी काफ़ी चल रही हैं। पोइट्री का वैसे काफ़ी नाम है पंजाबी में, उसकी सेल भी काफ़ी है। लेकिन हम लोग पोइट्री से थोड़ा डिफरेंट है। मुझे लगता है कि पोइट्री करने वाले और बहुत सारे लोग हैं, तो जो काम मैं कर सकता हूँ वो नॉन फिक्शन में है, तो इसीलिए हम लोग नॉन फिक्शन में ही ज़्यादा कर रहे हैं।
Just to quickly convey this in English, he is looking for, Parminder ji is publishing not just poetry but also mostly non-fiction, and they're trying to give to the readership in Punjab books that they have not yet been able to access because maybe of language barriers. So, and the focus in Punjab among his readership, he feels, is more on history and politics. And so they're also translating certain classics, classics. They are also translating certain seminal and classic books as well into Punjabi, and making sure that the readership also kind of experiments with different kind of reading. I think the first poetry book they did also got the Yuva Puraskar. Puraskar means award, the Sahitya Academy Puraskar. Yuva means for the
youth.
Youth. Thank you.
Under
So
35.
So I'm going to move to Esha. You have been very experimental in picking up books for Patra Bharati, and how do you diversify your list? And because even the Bengali reader is a very exacting reader, not too easy to make happy. So what are your tactics?
You know, with a list as huge as ours, it's, you know, we cannot focus on one single genre or one single age group or one single, economic background as such. We have to create a very diverse list every year, which focuses on both intellectual and popular fiction, non-fiction. We also look at a list and try and figure out that what is the buying capacity of this particular title when we are pricing the a particular book. A lot of times, a lot of books are priced lower because we think that this is a very non-urban buyer who might be buying this a certain title. A lot of times, a lot of books are priced for the urban. We look at titles, especially after COVID, we've started understanding the patterns of online and offline buying. We have around 7 bookstores across West Bengal. We do a lot of B2C selling. We do over 300 book fairs. We are adding 61 more this year. So school, colleges, housing, we are doing districts, 3 book fairs in each 26 districts across West Bengal. So our tactic is basically that we need to serve every kind of readership. Unless we do that, we cannot see a conversion in terms of sales and a certain scale. Saying that, we also make sure that we go by the 80-20 rule, which is basically 20% of our titles every year fend for the 80% of our business, and 80% of our titles fends for 20% of our business. So we make sure that the writers who are giving us that kind of sales are also looked after. At the same time, we are trying to find newer voices. And I have to mention this, that I represent Bangla publishing here. During COVID, actually from 2019 to 21, we saw a lot of young Bengali publishers coming up in College Street Market. Around 25, 30 new publishers came up who basically brought a whole lot of new writers into the publishing gamut. And among these huge number of writers who came up, 3-4 of them have actually made a good place for themselves. So we also a lot of times go and approach them for new books because we can see that they cater to a very young readership. Previously, there was a bias in a bigger publishing press that we only have a certain category of writers who are writing of a certain age group. But with internet coming in, we see that there's been a surge in terms of writers, demand for writers who are young, who are writing the problems, and we're talking about the issues and writing in a language that the younger people are speaking, the very, very colloquial Bangla with words in English, shorter sentences. So again, it's a very hands-on job. It's a daily thing that we look at. We look at our sales on a daily basis to understand the readership patterns and make decisions accordingly. But like every other person who's spoken today has said, that at the end of the day, what really matters is what's the book about, what's the story. You cannot ignore that. So everything kept in mind, that is the most important thing that we focus on, and the rest is what I spoke, the technicalities, the business part of it.
Thank you. Gita, the Hyderabad Book Trust has taken up a huge responsibility, and I would like to learn from you, what are the challenges and opportunities you are seeing in the evolving scene in Telugu? What are the demands, especially because, again, as I mentioned earlier, that there's a modern, very digitally inclined readership. And how do you balance publishing the traditional literary Telugu works along with finding modern, fresh voices in Telugu?
Yeah, I won't be answering any of your questions. Let me say that at the outset, and also let me warn you that mine is not going to be a success story, and I'm sort of amazed at the kind of strides the other languages have made in publishing. And I would say this in anywhere in the 2 Telugu states and here, I have no this thing, but Telugu literature is at a pits right now. I don't know where the issue lies. It could be that Andhra Pradesh, erstwhile Andhra Pradesh, the literature scene has had its roots in the communist movements, both the early communist movement and the Naxalite movement later. Though I don't see why Bangla didn't have the similar issue. But because of this very strong communist movement and its shadow over literature, everybody was looking behind their shoulders while writing, which means, you know, there wasn't much of writing going on. And since we started, we were in the midst of this when we started, but we really took up non-fiction. So this shadow didn't fall on us so much, or if it fell, maybe we were strong enough to bear it. And after that, we had the feminist movement, and which also threw shadows. Then we had the split in the Dalit movement. I mean, you might have in your own states between the two major subcastes of the Dalits, but you had a major split in Andhra Pradesh, which also threw its shadow. So which means like writers today are afraid to write. They're afraid to speak out, they're afraid to write. And I don't know whether Telugu was a flourishing market earlier, but certainly in the 40s, 50s and 60s there were, till the communist movement like really took over and said everything else is bourgeois. Now today, it is true, you know, it is true, because people still say this is bourgeois, and which is the best way of sort of killing an idea, killing a book, killing a thing. So now I don't know whether we are willing to start off on, you know, willing to discard the shadows. But what has happened is the recent trend over the last 20 years, all government schooling in the two Telugu states is in English. Last 20 years, I mean, private schools have been in English for far longer, but for the last 15 to 20 years, government schooling is in English. We have some of the staunchest proponents of that education should be in English. You might have heard of Kanchailaya and other people who say that the poorer people, the marginalized sections must also have the opportunity to read and write in English, and we have no quarrel with that. But what has happened is that now people know neither Telugu nor English, because they're not adequate teachers. The teachers don't know English, children don't know English, they've forgotten how to read and write their mother tongue. So the only thing which is keeping Telugu alive is the film industry. And the film industry in Andhra Pradesh, I mean, some of you may have seen Bahubali and some other blockbusters, and I can't tell you how bad that is for literature. Telugu film doesn't draw any inspiration from literature, unlike, say, in Kerala or Tamil Nadu. It's the other way around. Literature, if there's a film which has come out, there's a book on the film, right? So that's the quality which is, this is the problem we are facing right now. I don't know how we are going to get out of it. I mean, that is the Hyderabad Book Trust, after some 43 years of publishing in Telugu, and we've stood our ground in a way. Now what we've done is, I don't know whether that's the escape route, but we've started an English imprint. We said, you don't want to read Telugu, so let's produce books in English. Because the constant complaint is that my son, my daughter, my sister can't read English, Telugu. They can speak Telugu, but they can't read and write. So now we are producing English translations of our own books and other popular books in English. So I don't know where that will take us, but whatever it is, it's a very dismal scene in both the Telugu states. And I would say the same thing. What I say here is not for an audience which is, it's easy to blame your country or literature outside in a neighbor's house, but I'd say the same thing there too.
Yeah, Gita, in Hindi, there is a same scenario in Hindi also.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Over the feminist movement, Dalit movement literature, or you say communist communist movement literature overshadow the other type of literature. They said that these are the bourgeois. But we started a new genre of writing, that is Nai Wali Hindi, to celebrate other kind of writing. Yeah. But the scenario is same here. जैसे कि एक बात, बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट बात जो आपने कही, मैं उसको थोड़ा सा और कह दूं. जैसे मेरे से कोई पूछता है, जैसे हमने कुछ किताबें ऐसी भी पब्लिश की जिनकी कॉपीज़ लाख में सेल हुई, लेकिन अगर हम ओवरऑल बिजनेस की बात करें तो कोई हमसे पूछता है कि आप इसका फ्यूचर क्या देखते हैं, तो फ्यूचर मुझे डरावना दिखता है. उसकी वजह क्या है? जैसे मैं एक हिंदी पब्लिशिंग में इसलिए आया क्योंकि मेरी जो 12वीं तक की 12th तक की जो पढ़ाई है वो हिंदी मीडियम में थी. तो मतलब जो मीडियम में पढ़ता है उसका अपनी लैंग्वेज से जो कनेक्शन है वो उसका किसी उस व्यक्ति का नहीं हो सकता जो उसको लैंग्वेज की तरह पढ़ता है. तो अब क्या है कि हिंदी स्पीकिंग अगर आप एरियाज़ में देखेंगी तो अब ऐसे लोग नहीं बचे हैं कि लोअर मिडिल क्लास भी अब हिंदी मीडियम स्कूल में पढ़ता हो। अब गांव-गांव तक में भी अंग्रेज़ी मीडियम स्कूल खुल गए हैं। फॉर्चुनेटली अभी भी यूपी, बिहार, एमपी में गवर्नमेंट स्कूल हिंदी मीडियम स्कूल्स हैं, लेकिन उनमें वो बच्चे नहीं जा रहे हैं जो मतलब जिनके घर में इतना भी पैसा हो कि आगे चल कर के वो 12th तक की पढ़ाई करें। ज़्यादातर ड्रॉप आउट्स हैं, मतलब ये एक्चुअल फैक्ट्स हैं। तो आने वाले टाइम में जब मीडियम में एजुकेटेड लोग नहीं रहेंगे तो बहुत मुश्किल है कि वो लिटरेचर से वो पढ़ेंगे। पढ़ने का कोई रीज़न नहीं बनता, क्योंकि अगर आप इंग्लिश मीडियम स्कूल में पढ़ते हैं तो आप अदर देन अपने स्कूल बुक्स से ना आप उस तरह की कोई मैगज़ीन पढ़ते हैं जो बच्चों की है, क्योंकि आपको उसकी कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है। और उसके बाद आपका कैसे कनेक्शन बनेगा सिनेमा के अलावा किसी और। तो हिंदी में भी जो मोर ऑफ जो है, जो लोग आपको दिखते हैं वो सिनेमा है, जो आपने बात कही। तो तेलुगु के सीन जैसा 100% ना हो, लेकिन 90% सेम सीन है। और जैसे कि बांग्ला की जहाँ तक बात है, मेरे कुछ ऐसे दोस्त, जब मैं बीटेक कर रहा था तो उसमें बहुत तरह के लोग थे, तो हमेशा मैं देखता था कि जो बांग्ला स्पीकिंग लोग हैं वो आपस में बंगाली ही बोलते थे। तो मुझे लगता था कि यार बंगाली जो है वो काफ़ी मतलब रूटेड है। तो उन लोगों से एक बार मैंने कहा कि भाई तुम तो बंगाली में पढ़ते भी हो। उन्होंने कहा पढ़ना ही नहीं आता हमको बंगाली में। बंगाली हम बोलते हैं, लेकिन हम तो ऐसे स्कूल में पढ़े हैं जहाँ पे इंग्लिश के अलावा अगर कोई और लैंग्वेज बोला तो हमें हमारे ऊपर फ़ाइन लगता था, है ना। तो वहाँ पे भी काफ़ी मुश्किल है। मतलब जो पुरानी रीडरशिप बंगाल में रही थी कि जैसे 20,000 50,000 ऐसे कॉपीज़ जाती होगी, जनरली अब वहाँ पे भी 1000-2000 के ही प्रिंट रन्स छपते होंगे। और बहुत सारा प्रिंट रन्स तो अब तो पीओडी हो गया, इसीलिए हो गया क्योंकि बहुत लिमिटेड बायर्स हैं। और मराठी अभी यहाँ पे कोई नहीं है मराठी पब्लिशर। मराठी पब्लिकेशन की भी कमोबेश ऐसी हालत है, क्योंकि वहाँ पे भी 500 एंड 1100 1000 के प्रिंट रन्स हैं, जो कि बहुत शर्मनाक है उतने बड़े राज्य के लिए। थैंक यू।
हाँ, I think let me just quickly translate what he added. So, Gita, I'm going to speak to you in detail about this later. I mean, you've thrown up a lot of thoughts in my head, but thank you for bearing the reality in front of us. What Shailesh contributed was that to a certain extent, the same kind of influences are working in the Hindi literature ecosystem as well. And I think more important, what I gleaned from what he said is that the connect you have with a particular language in which you have done your education in, and the likelihood of your continuing to be connected with that language and reading literature in that language is very, very essential to reading habits. Because eventually, if you don't connect with the language that you are just treating as a language, and it's not incipient, inherent to your DNA, you don't connect with the literature otherwise in a proper way. And it comes down to education and how English as a medium of expression and teaching is taking over all sorts of education, even at the primary level, even in the rural areas. There is a impact on that, and people are not reading literature from their own languages because of this disconnect in the medium of education and reading outside. So people are speaking in their languages but not picking up books in their own languages, because that is impacting how they're moving forward with their reading choices.
Can I add one point?
Can I just go to Ravi once and then I'll come back? Yes, then it'll be like a more free-flowing conversation. I'll come back to you, Gita. Sorry. So Ravi, with the way the discussion has moved, I would like you to comment on what are the trends you're seeing in Malayalam literature. What is it that you're looking at publishing increasingly in Malayalam in terms of genres, and also comment on the translation scene, because there is a lot happening in that field as well. And then we'll come back and open it up.
I think in the recent past, the recent years rather, the Malayalam cinema as well as the Malayalam writing is with the newer generation. So I think the Malayalam cinema is accepted across India and elsewhere. So similarly, a lot of newer generation writers are coming up, and if you take 10 years back, we had the people who wrote in 70s and before were the bestsellers, actually. I mean, you call it Bashir Tagari or Paul Sakria, or to a great extent, actually, to the writers in that league as well as in that period. Now, in the last 10 to 15 years, actually, some of the debut books, actually, the debut writers has taken the front seat. I mean, when I say front seat, actually, some of these books have sold in huge numbers. And the numbers like probably some of these debut writers start with about 15, 20,000 copies a year. And some of them may go much above that, actually. So I think the writers connect with the readers in the newer generation. And other experiment, because of this trend, actually, what we have done in the last few years was actually, we have taken some of the classical works from the past, and we try to connect as a revisiting those books, actually, and those have done wonderfully well as well. So for Malayalam, actually, it's more about connecting with the readers, actually, be it the debut writers, be it the writers from the current generation or from the past, actually. So that's what it's happening in Malayalam. For same reason, actually, a lot of it, or probably half of the new debut writers, actually, or their works have gone into English and other languages. I mean, the last 5 years, when the JCB award also, Malayalam got 3 awards in the 5 years, actually, and we had 2 other people got shortlisted as well. I mean, VJ James and I think Sheila Tommy, actually. So that's a kind of, Sheila Tommy is a new writer, Vinoy Thomas is a new writer. So all these people have been published into English and other languages, you know. So it's something different in Malayalam, and younger generation, they are reading, of course, they're reading Malayalam as well as English in terms of the reading preference, you know. I see a sort of difference between some other languages is actually the bookshops in Kerala. What they do is, I mean, like, you know, the people who, the readers who come to the bookshop, you know, unlike some other places I've been, they buy both Malayalam as well as English titles, actually. So, I mean, probably the ones they like in Malayalam, they buy in Malayalam, and when the new ones in English, they buy in English. So probably they're versatile in both languages. I mean, I'm sorry about the Telugu scenario there, actually, but, you know, here I think the readers prefer both languages, actually, depending upon the work, you know. So that's what the thing is, actually, in Malayalam.
Thank you, Ravi. Back to you, Gita. You were saying something.
I want to add that, I mean, it seems that translation is, you know, Indian languages in translation are doing well in English, winning prizes, etc. It could be that, you know, some Telugu book also may win. But the thing is, where are your feet? Are your feet, your ear could be at the ground, but are your feet on the ground? So except for the 2 communist publishing giants in Telugu and 1 more publishing house, every publishing house takes money from the author to print a book. Every other publishing house. So if an author wants to print a book, he funds the entire publishing process. And then some returns, 40% of the returns go to him. I missed this point out, but this is something like a startling new development in Telugu. So it's not as if there aren't writers. I mean, those of you who do not know about Telugu will see, oh, so-and-so has written a book, so-and-so has written a book. There will be many people going around with badges like this in different festivals saying, I'm a writer, I'm a writer. The thing is, did you pay for your book? So, I mean, that's how Telugu publishing is now.
So I think, you know, across languages, maybe in the South or Hindi or Marathi, I think the challenges we face might be similar, in the sense that education is more and more in English, and the parents and schools promote English reading when it comes to at least children's book. But I think the way that we respond, every language ecosystem responds to these challenges, that is, I think, is very local and is very different. Malayalam responds in its own way. It has had its great political movements, but what has happened in Andhra clearly has not happened there. In Tamil, for example, I will say that I started this company in 1990s, when a few things happened. That first, India was economically liberalized. There was a huge technological revolution, and within the Tamil literary scape, two things happened. There was a huge women's writing movement as we were beginning to publish, and also that after the Ambedkar centenary, Dalit movement came very late to Tamil, and that was the peak. 90s was the peak in Tamil. But the way I see it now is very clearly that all these movements greatly contributed to the intellectual writing milieu in Tamil. There were polemics, there were attacks, there was a lot of debates. But on the whole, finally, what has happened is that the whole thing has revived and taken writing, literature, poetry beyond the literary circle into a broader circle through their politics. So in Tamil, I would say all the same movements that happened in the rest of the South might also be there, but they were very contributive. And among the Tamil readership today, there will be a significant group that is from the left-wing parties' cultural movements. So they are also very part of the readers group. They have evolved, created readers by publishing books, by making them readers, by giving awards, by holding literary nights. They have also created a lot of readership. So that's what I want to make a point, that I think we all respond differently to the same challenges.
Yeah.
Can I add something?
Because I think both of you make your comments and then we'll open it up for questions.
So I'll speak because you mentioned about the communist movement. I think in Bangla, anything that's very authoritative, there is a bunch of great writers who are going to write anti-establishment. So during the communist movement, we saw writers like Sunil Gangopadhyay come up into the literary scene. So I think that is something that's very specific to Bengalis. We were just discussing the other day that there's not enough crisis at this point to make books sell, because Bengalis love reading about anti-establishment for, I don't know why, for what reason. Secondly, I'd say that, which Ravi ji mentioned, that in Bangla we see that the Bengali readers read in both Bangla and English. We are not competing with English at all. There is no competition. What comes out in English is very different from what comes out in Bangla. We've seen people preferring to read a certain kind of literature in Bangla, a certain kind of writers in Bangla. So we've joined hands with English. We have no qualms with that. Of course, everybody's turning into English language reading. Younger parents of kids, they're looking for translations from Bangla literature, classic translations from Bangla literature. That's fine. We'll produce, at B, we do translations only with the focus that we can obviously spread more the Bangla literature more further than what it is at this point of time. But we also know that if somebody is reading Bangla in translation, over a period of time will be interested enough to read that in their original language. There is something about coming back home. And after a certain age, we've seen that people have come back to us and said that, you know, we were born and brought up in Bombay, but we now want to read in Bangla because those nuances, those exclamations, that language, it connects. I don't know if it's specific to Bangla. And the third thing that I'd say is that Bangladesh plays a very important role in keeping Bangla as a language alive. The font, the text, they always write in Bangla. Bengalis in general, we take pride in the fact that we are always writing our updates in Bengali and everybody is writing everything in Bangla. But Bangladesh, that population plays a very important role in keeping Bangla active in the international forum. And sometimes it's a struggle to go and explain to people that I'm from India and I speak Bengali. So that's my take. I think, like I said, every language responds to a crisis differently. And I think the best way to respond is to not go into a competition with, or not have any animosity with the English language.
आई थिंक ये हिंदी या जैसे गीता मैम ने कहा तेलुगु की प्रॉब्लम है. मुझे लगता है पंजाबी या सभी रीजनल लैंग्वेज की आजकल यही प्रॉब्लम है कि जो रीडरशिप है वो कम भी हो रही है और पता भी नहीं लग रहा कि पाठक जो है पढ़ना क्या चाहता है. एक पब्लिशर के तौर पे हम लोग देखते हैं कि हम एक अच्छी किताब जो है अपने पाठक को देंगे, वो उसको नोट्स लेंगे उसके या उसको अप्रिशिएट करेंगे. लेकिन बहुत सारी किताबें ऐसी भी होती हैं कि अच्छी होने के बावजूद भी वो अपने जो है रीडरशिप को उस तरह हासिल नहीं कर पाती जैसे कि उन्हें करना चाहिए. पंजाबी में लास्ट 2-3 साल से कुछ ऐसा हो रहा है कि जो सबसे ख़राब किताबें वो सबसे ज़्यादा बिक रही हैं और जो बेहद अच्छी किताबें हैं वो कहीं गुम हो जाती हैं। मुझे लगता है कि लास्ट टाइम मैं जो पोइट्री की किताब पढ़ी थी और जो मुझे बहुत अच्छी लगी, तो मैं चाहता था कि वो सभी लैंग्वेज में ट्रांसलेट हो। मुश्किल से उसकी 20 या 25 कॉपी सेल हुई होंगी। तो मतलब इतनी बड़ी त्रासदी है। और एक किताब अभी जो 40,000 के करीब चली है, इतनी बेकार है कि किसी ने भी उसको अच्छा नहीं कहा। और फेसबुक सोशल मीडिया पे इस तरह मजाक उड़ाया जा रहा है, लेकिन वो ब्लैक में बिक रही है। तो हम लोग क्या है कि इसको पता नहीं है कैसे डिसाइड कर पाएंगे कि अच्छी या बुरी किताब या कौन सी भाषा की किताब कैसी रहेगी। तो जो एडोलजी की बात है उसमें भी दो चीज़ें हैं। जैसे हम लोग मूवमेंट की बात करते हैं, मूवमेंट की किताबें हो जाती हैं, उसको ग्लोरीफाई किया जाता है। जैसे मैं अब खुद को बोलता हूँ कि मैं मार्क्सिस्ट नहीं हूँ, लेकिन मेरे घर में कैपिटल पढ़ा है, वो मैंने बेशक कभी नहीं लिया, पढ़ा नहीं है, और मेरे जैसे बहुत सारे लोग हैं। ऐसे ही जो दूसरी चीज़ें होती हैं वो किताब को ग्लोरीफाई करती है, वो उसको लोग खरीदते हैं, पढ़ते नहीं हैं। लेकिन तो ऐसा है, मुझे मानना मेरा मानना ये है कि किताबों को लेकर हम लोग जो जितनी बातें करते हैं, मेरा ख्याल है वो उतनी असलियत में होती भी नहीं है। क्योंकि पाठक को वो जैसे बोलते हैं ना कि फिल्मों वाले के जो दर्शक है पता नहीं थिएटर में जाके क्या सोचता है। अभी मुझे भी लगता है कि पाठक पता नहीं क्या सोचता है, पब्लिशर उसको पकड़ ही नहीं पा रहे। तो मेरा ख्याल है पब्लिशर को इस पे भी काम करना चाहिए थोड़ा सा।
You made a lot of points. I don't know if I'll be able to sum them up all. So, Parminder ji is saying that he's also facing the same issues. There is a bit of vagueness where they're also grappling with understanding what the readers really want. So, according to him, this one particular poetry book was absolutely brilliant. And that sold just 25 copies, which is abysmal. But a mediocre or less than mediocre book in his eyes sold more than 40,000 copies. I think that must be a bright case of image management. That's what works these days. But so he's also facing the same kind of challenges in Punjabi publishing. And also one major point that he's made is that a lot of books are bought for the sake of being bought. You may not necessarily read them. And then how do you determine the essence of what a reader wants? Sorry, have I
बहुत अच्छा किया।
Thing is actually, we had the communist movement, we had the Prabhat Book House. I think Tamil Nadu has a News Century, right? And Navakarnataka in Canada, and I'm sure West Bengal also had a similar publishing in communist. But we came out of it actually in the 1970s. I mean, when the Sahitya Pravartaka Cooperative Society and a few others actually got into very active publishing. Even prior to that, actually, also, because of Progress books in Russia and Pravada, actually, I think, were the ones actually introduced a lot of good books earlier. But that was past for us, you know. And I think with the Telugu, I mean, I just want to add to that, actually. Probably the audiobook is the format, actually, you can bring the Telugu literature back into the mainstream, you know. I know a guy, actually, I know a kid who is about 22 years old, and I met him, and he doesn't know, he can't read or write Malayalam, but he listens to S.K. Pattakadu, to all the best writers, actually, on the audiobook, actually. So he's as literate or as interested in literature and other areas, actually, as others, actually. So probably audio is the format, actually, which will bring back the language publishing, Indian language publishing back into the track. Just a thought.
Do we have time?
Yeah. I really would like, I mean, this to be taken up in a larger, I mean, why is one language responding in one way to a crisis, and how is another language able to survive that? I mean, this is a question really which is of a larger importance. And I would like Jaipur, BookMark, if we can have some more discussion on this, because I really want to see some solution to the problem we are facing. We are, I mean, luckily because of COVID, audio, digital format, we are into everything. It's just that the culture has changed so much. Nobody wants to go back to good literature. They'd much rather, you know, hear, see, celebrity kind of stuff going on. So that's also linked to the kind of literature which you're producing in the Indian language.
I think with that, I'm going to thank all the panelists. You've all contributed and given of yourselves so generously, bared your thoughts, and there's a lot of learning coming from each one of you. Gita's right, we need more detailed discussions, and a lot of exchange of ideas needs to happen. I think we need a forum that you meet regularly on Zoom or something, that at least you can overcome the geographical barriers and continue exchanging ideas and help each other. There's so much to learn and do. On that note, I'd like to thank Manisha and her team at Jaipur Bookmark and JLF for keeping such a diverse panel. Thank you so much, and to our audience today. Thank you. Sorry, we didn't have time for questions, but yeah, the conversations can carry on
We
post the session.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Gita, I can't. I'm not.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. We can continue the discussion.
क्वेश्चन ले लेते हैं मेरे ख्याल में कुछ क्वेश्चन ले लेने चाहिए
We are out
You're the
of time.
decision
We
maker.
can continue the
No,
discussion.
I can
after.
leave, but the questions can continue.
We are into lunchtime. If anybody has,
Yeah, the questions can continue.
We can continue the discussions
we'd like
after.
to give you your
Thank you.
scarves because Mita has to be.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We would like to thank Parminder Singh Shonkey, Gita Ramaswamy.
Thank you for a wonderful discussion, and after listening to it, I have a very selfish question, but after listening to what you all have said and sharing about all the different languages, I'm asking this with some trepidation. I've published my novel, it's called The Long March, in 2018 by Speaking Tiger Books. And I'm hopeful that it would be translated into other Indian languages. I've written in English. I'm myself translating it to Marathi because my native language is Marathi. So I want to know, what kind of interest and possibilities there are in translating and publishing it in all the different languages.
नहीं
I think Esha wants to go first.
मेरा इंटरेस्ट है स्पीकिंग टाइगर के साथ हम लोग पहले भी काम कर रहे हैं मुझे अच्छा लगेगा कि अगर हम पंजाबी में उसको लाएं
I request everyone to take your questions after.
Not personal.
Thank you. This question is for all of you. You all said that regional languages are not being taught in primary schools and all. Don't you think this is related to economy and jobs and employment and everything? Because the major jobs right now in India are in service industry. And service industry needs English speaking and writing people. I run a company in Chandigarh. I've hired 800 people in the last 4 years. The primary criteria is that you need to know how to read and write and speak in English. So if you don't teach them in English, they are not able to get those jobs. So I think that is related to economy, and that's a bigger problem. And all those things are related. I have one second question for Mr. Parminder. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਯੂ ਆਰ ਫੋਕਸਿੰਗ ਔਨ ਨਾਨ ਫਿਕਸ਼ਨ ਪੋਲਿਟਿਕਸ ਐਂਡ ਆਲ ਇੱਕ ਅਲੱਗ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਦੀ ਹਵਾ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਪੰਜਾਬ 'ਚ ਇੱਕ ਪੋਲਿਟਿਕਸ ਡਾਇਨਾਮਿਕ ਚੇਂਜ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਆਪ ਦੇ ਆਉਣ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਐਂਡ ਦੇਰ ਆਰ ਐਲੀਮੈਂਟਸ ਹੂ ਆਰ ਟਰਾਈਂਗ ਟੂ ਚੇਂਜ ਦ ਫਲੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਦਾ ਪੋਲਿਟਿਕਸ ਲਿਟਰੇਚਰ ਛਾਪਣ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਦੈਟ ਆਈ ਨੀਡ ਟੂ ਆਈ ਵਾਂਟਡ ਟੂ ਨੋ ਫਰਸਟ ਸਰ ਆਮ ਸੌਰੀ ਦੇਰ ਆਰ 2 questions I'm really sorry. Thank you.
Can I just do a correction here? I mean, we call all the languages Indian languages rather than regional because Malayalam is spoken by only 2% of the population, but it's the 3rd largest publishing in India. So rather every single language is a Indian language rather than a regional language. Sorry I'm putting this, I'm not a fanatic, but still.
You needing to have jobs that require a certain competence in English doesn't mean that you cannot have competence in your, what is called your own language or your mother tongue. And there are many people I know for the earlier generation who studied in their mother tongue up till degree. And yes, and then made the transition to English fairly easily. So why is it that we have to have this kind of blinkered thinking that we need jobs, so we don't need to, know our own language. I don't think the two need to go together. The government, like say Tamil Nadu government, has been very proactive in encouraging, I hope they're also encouraging Tamil literature, but they're certainly encouraging translations from Tamil into other languages, which gives Tamil some kind of dignity. A language also needs dignity. You can't unclothe it fully and say, the market doesn't want you, you go on the street. Yeah, language is also.
Can you pass the mic, please?
Fluency in your mother tongue first is the first building block of fluency in other languages. So the 800 people that you hired, if they knew Punjabi well, that was not either or, that they would either know Punjabi well or English well. In fact, if they knew Punjabi well, they would have more nuanced expression, better vocabulary. Therefore, even their acquisition of English would be way better. This is backed by research.
Manisha, I was going to say the same thing actually, because French is a model for that actually. I mean, up to fourth, smaller classes actually, you need to learn French first so that you can, acquire another language better. And your learning and your scholastic will be much more if you know your language better than any other language in the beginning. Then you can move into the next.
So, can we have all the discussions after this? Let's. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We can continue.
मैं ज़्यादा टाइम नहीं लूँगा क्योंकि उनका जो क्वेश्चन था वो थोड़ा सा पॉलिटिकल था, तो और पॉलिटिकल मेरे जो बयान होते हैं वो कंट्रोवर्शियल होते हैं. मेरा ख्याल है कि मैं उनसे बाद में बात कर लूँगा कि हम लोग कैसा काम करते हैं और पंजाब में उसकी क्या वैल्यू है. तो मेरा ख्याल है हम लोग बाद में मिलते हैं.
My question is to the whole panel. Do we have data from bookstores about how many people prefer the vernacular books over English books? Like Sir mentioned that Malayalam and English is equal, so it's 50-50. But my experience shows that Telugu and Hindi are actually in very bad shape. Bengali and Marathi are relatively in good shape because people who belong to my socio-economic background want to read those books to connect with their roots. So do we have data from bookstores, as in how many, what is the percentage of the Indian languages vis-a-vis the English language? Do we have that data from bookstores?
The print order will tell you. You don't need to go to a shop. If Kannan tells us how many copies of any half-woman was sold in English and how many in Tamil, you'll know that straight away. So you really don't need to go to a shop. The print orders will tell you.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, that what is the number of sales, and it doesn't need to be from a bookstore. And the point that I missed also, that in Indian language publishing, in my case Bangla, there's a lot of push sales that happen. We actually participate in so many book fairs and we are present in so many places only because we need to be more visible. English gets that very easily because English is spoken across. It's almost like a bridge language at this point of time. Whereas in Bengali, we need to be present and make our presence felt. So like I said, that whatever the number of titles that are selling, kind of, you can understand that what is the demand. And Gita was talking about Bangla and translation, talking about Telugu and translation of that in English. But if you look at the data of an original English title and an original Bangla title, I think that's a better comparison to have, rather than looking at the same literature.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.